Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, you can hear me. Good. Welcome to this afternoon's session, Accelerate Innovation to be the bank your customers love. How many people just came from the keynote? Almost everyone. Excellent. Thank you for making the schlep over here, as we say. My name is Anthony Morris. I'm with Salesforce. I'm part of our global financial services industry team responsible for banking. I know a lot of you in the audience. I've been here about 6 years. I've been in the industry 25 years. And thrilled this afternoon to give you a perspective on where we're going from a banking point of view, how we're investing from a product and a partner ecosystem, and hear from a couple of our amazing customers. So first of all, I want to thank everybody. How many people are Salesforce customers already in banking? So the vast majority. So thank you very much. I personally have a great passion for this space. I started out in the late 80s as what we call platform officer, a side counter officer in Canada. Worked up to a branch manager, worked on systems development at a couple of banks in Canada, and it's extremely exciting to be part of this incredible change that's going on in our industry. But I get inspired from all of you. Those of you, I literally come out, get on a plane, meet you, work with you, see how you're using our technology, see how you're fundamentally changing things, is what drives us forward. So thank all of you who are customers. Obviously, how many people can read this by heart yet? Right? Okay, so you know the drill there. Please make any buying decisions based on generally available product. So I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes myself. We've got Ken Meyer, CTO from SunTrust Bank. We've got Ryan Johnson, head of strategy from City National. Great colleague of mine, a fellow Canadian, David Polachuk. So if you hear a lot of A's or out and abouts this afternoon, you'll know that we're not from the United States. How many people are from abroad, not from the United States? Wow. Probably a good 60% of the room. There's my Spanish colleague at the back. Welcome to San Francisco. Is everybody having a great Dreamforce? Thank you, thank you. So I want to pick up, let's just assume the keynote that you were in. Let's double click on that whole keynote and let's look at everything from a banking lens. And for those of you, how many people have been in the industry, let's say greater than 20 years? Right, so could you imagine when you started that at this point in time, the cusp of change that's going on is sort of mind-numbing, if you will? And if you stop and you think about it, the last few days we've been talking about the fourth industrial revolution, it has yet to really hit us, AI. We are literally not even the tip of the iceberg. We're probably a flake of snow on the tip of that iceberg of what's possible with AI when you stop and think about it. Right? Every piece of information, every transaction data, every debit and credit, every payment, every loan request, everything is a piece of information that is where we are going to derive value. And how you use that, how you connect it, how you expose it, that's what the future is going to hold. And we all know, and we had a great roundtable for those of you who were in our roundtable yesterday, that our entire industry is fraught with data problems. And that has to be solved, and it has to be solved quickly if we are to embrace what the future holds. I personally, the more I get my mind around blockchain and distributed ledger and how that could change not the back office, but complex distributed processes that involve multiple parties, you think about that next iceberg that's floating towards us as well, that's going to change the course of our lane. So it's really, really exciting. I wouldn't even be scared. I think the opportunity for what's possible in our industry is amazing. But we're all typically weighed down by the last 50 years. And most of you may know, you may not know, the genesis of this really was McKinsey back in the 60s, right? It said the efficiency of a bank is driven by products, and the systems that have evolved around that over time, around transactions and product, have fundamentally resulted in the disconnected matrix that we all exist in today. Which is why when you think about it differently and you look at all the new startups who aren't thinking about products but are organizing themselves horizontally, right? Putting the customer at the center of everything. And in our world, that's like, one of the best taglines we've heard for 15 years, put the customer at the center of your business. But unless there is a strategy behind that that's really horizontal in nature, right? That thinks of all of these disciplines from the overall customer experience, right? Where channels start to blur together, right? Where the customer traverses every product in every business line, and you'll see that in the demo, and you'll hear it from our great customers today. This really is the model that we all need to evolve to, and getting there is not easy. I mean, what I just showed is an ocean to cross. But I'm thankful to say that a number of the customers we work with are on that journey today, and it only really happens from a strategic point of view, and then perpetuates itself down through the organization. So when you do that, when you start thinking from a horizontal perspective, when you start connecting the dots, and we heard Rohit talk about it earlier in terms of unlocking the unfair potential, I don't think, honestly, it's possible to fix the technical debt that we have. You can make it simplified, you can standardize on platforms, you can connect data together, you can have core processes. But when you do that in the area that counts around the customer experience and their well-being and manage your risk and compliance on there, you then become to unlock the potential of what's possible. And I have just a few concepts here. And for those of you who are watching our launch at BAI for FSC, for retail banking, I talked about some of these. I think a couple of the really interesting ones is the concept of distribution changing. I mean, the fact that people can do banking now on WhatsApp, that they're expecting the bank to be an in-app, an in-online experience wherever they are, not where you are. So digital fundamentally has, the term has changed over the last several years. It's no longer an app on your phone. It really should be the mechanism for distribution. And if apps can be consolidated and simplified and processes redefined and surfaced up through cloud technology, right, then you can have a single distribution environment, if you will, that you can constantly add to and change and push that out to any touch point that makes sense. It may be a legacy branch touch point. It may be an in-app experience. It may be a blockchain service in the future, who's to say? And what really, I think, and I talked about it just earlier, what AI can do. And I like to think of it this way. I personally, over the last year, how many people are from Canada? Toronto? So you know how crazy our property market has been up in the Great White North the last year? Insane. So I took advantage of that, and I sold my house at the height of the bubble. And I made a crazy amount of money. And I put that money in a savings account and a short-term certificate of deposit. And then a month later, I took out a large sum and I bought another property. In the last 8 months, I've torn it down, I've been building it, I've been drawing on all my equity to pay for it. And the outreach I've had from my bank has been zero. And every time I walk in to get a little bit of cash, to pay a little trade, I sort of drop another hint, and nothing happens. And they're seeing me as just a series of transactions. But everything that I've done, everything I actually post on LinkedIn or Facebook about the progress of what I'm doing, every time I email my bank or call and say I need another few $1,000s, I got to pay the painter next week, I'm giving signals. And that's what all of these things are, they're signals. And AI can pick up on that if it's listening. I mean, today we're talking about predictive leads and predictive needs. Think about where this will be in a year or two. The smarts of a banker that can be embedded in business processes, that can proactively predict service issues, customer needs, recommendations, the right advice at point of sale, at point of thought. That's where we're headed, and that's the power of what connecting the bank and having an unfair potential is really all about. But a vision and technology are great, and many people realize that having those two is not enough. In fact, they're probably the least important facts of the equation. The banks that we have seen that have been truly successful, and we just saw it with Citi earlier today, have made difficult decisions. They've stopped trying to build things in-house that have cost tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. They've had a clear vision and a strategy that's reflected themselves in business alignment. Any bank you talk to, any customer you talk to will tell you that the ingredient or the formula of their success was around how they align themselves horizontally, not vertically. How they put the customer in the forefront of thought and design. How they establish new responsibilities and new roles. Who's the customer design authority? Who owns the customer experience? Who owns the customer? These are really tough questions in a bank where everyone owns them and no one owns them, right? Especially, I mean, we were having this conversation with a customer a few weeks ago saying, well, as more and more customers migrate to digital, as more and more services get embedded in these digital applications, who owns the customer? Is it a personal banker, a branch manager, a wealth advisor, when the customer's spending 80-90% of their time outside of high-touch channels? So having strategies that reflect it, having business alignment, recognizing that technology is a slave to business and not the other way around. And then on the flip side, how many banks here are wrestling with their data architectures and data infrastructure? Right? Almost everyone. The customers I've seen who have gotten it right have made some hard decisions. They've clearly outlined, they've delineated in what systems, what platforms will master data, who will be the master, who will be the slave, how will they standardize it, Have they implemented an MDM structure? Data is the bloodline of the future bank, right? The customer is the heartbeat, but if the data is not flowing properly, if it can't get from one artery to the next, it's not going to surface itself in AI. And then all of the processes that can be reimagined and rethought. I mean, it's not unusual for a bank to have, an account opening process for online and another one for a branch and not one for a contact center, right? Refactor all of these. This is where the concept of digital as a channel takes hold. So what are we doing to help expedite that? So number one, we spend a lot of time, and thanks to my marketing colleagues sitting over here, a lot of time touching the market and understand what's going on. As you've seen, we've invested significantly in Financial Services Cloud, and we just launched retail banking about a month ago. I'll go into that. And as important, we are building out our partner ecosystem. As we drive a vertical data model, as we have partners build on top of that and integrate to it, we're making things more relevant, more strategic, and accelerating value and time to innovation for the market, for yourselves. And we have over 200 customers, several of them banks these days, in the last several months, who are lining up to implement Financial Services Cloud, specifically on the banking side of their operations. So let me spend a few minutes and introduce this to you, and then David's going to come up and do a demo. So for those of you who aren't aware, Financial Services Cloud is Salesforce. It is an extension of the Salesforce platform. It is additive to Sales and Service Cloud. Everything that exists in Sales and Service Cloud is brought into Financial Services Cloud, and then it's verticalized. How does an opportunity look for a bank or a wealth firm? What is the concept of a retail banking customer? What are all the data attributes and elements that surround them? What are all the account types, deposit and credit? How do you service that customer? How do you identify needs? So we have verticalized sales and service. We've added a whole host of capabilities. And that allows us to build a solution ecosystem around that. But then you have our partners who build on top of this, right? Incredible partners, whether it's identity management, deposit originations, loan management, you name it. And they provide the ability to deploy any number of solutions across the entire front office, not just CRM. And I want to have a big shout out to our great customers, Webster Bank. Where is Greg here? Or Alice? They said they were going to be here. Okay, thank you. Webster Bank, one of our great trailblazers who use Salesforce across multiple business lines to start innovating and changing their entire business model. So let me go into this very quickly. So what is in Financial Services Cloud? Again, when I say Financial Services Cloud for banking, I'm essentially talking about the vertical or the banking version of Salesforce. So there's a robust data model. Dozens and dozens of objects and data attributes that define a customer, that will help fuel AI, that will help put customers on powerful journeys. As you saw in the demo earlier, relationship app and Builder, probably the centerpiece of it, to really understand how that individual customer is connected to other parties in their household, to other entities within the bank, to really bring that 360-degree view to life. Financial accounts, out of the box, all of the financial account objects and definitions are there. Why is that important? You can't predict the right products and services. You can't service against those unless those attributes are in the system. So that allows you to expedite and innovate quicker and to build your processes on an industry data model. We spent a lot of time building what we call intelligent needs and referrals, not your average referral, but a referral that's based on who the customer is, what is their need, what is their intent, which line of business or hand does that need to get into immediately. The ability to generate alerts based on any trigger on any attribute in the platform. Any product type, any account, any change in opportunity and service case, alert, activity, you name it. And as important, we're implementing a feature coming in January called Task Orchestration and Compliance, the ability to enforce any system, process, and activity within the Salesforce application for full visibility, accountability, audit, and compliance. As powerful. Having a great sales and service platform is great. Without having the right controls in place, we know what can happen there. And of course, the ability to connect all of these things across the channel landscape. So the ability to deploy Financial Services Cloud through customizable communities, to be able to source referrals and cases and activities from any channel, the ability to build custom community apps on top of Financial Services Cloud. And the whole stack is fully API enabled, especially as our industry moves to open APIs, as things become more connected, as the ability to push your products and services and data to third parties and vice versa. Who can see a point in time in the next few years where Tesla offers banking products and services through their distribution network, and you're providing that through them, through an API network? We are at the cusp of that. There are vendors who are doing that today. And of course, a banking ecosystem that makes all of this real. A couple I want to shout out today, you've heard them time and time again, nCino, built on our platform, fully aligned to FSC. You can go directly from sales management to customer onboarding, originations, you name it. Cloud Lending, another great partner, built on the Salesforce platform, about to launch their FSC package. Full loan management, loan servicing, collections. All of these mission-critical apps now within the Salesforce platform through our partners. It fundamentally changes who we are from a banking point of view. You're able to take the concept of CRM and redefine it to be the whole front office. So with that, I'd like to call up another fellow Canadian, David Polachuk. He's going to give you a great demo and bring all of this to life. Sir?
All right. So, like Anthony was saying earlier, we want to double-click, assuming that everybody's been in the FSC keynote right before this. So in the FSC keynote, we introduced you to Rachel, and Rachel was looking for a loan, and she was able to work with Victor in order to, I don't know if there's a persona slide, in order to achieve that loan seamlessly within the application framework of Salesforce and FSC. So what we'd like to do now is see what happens a year later. Victor's logging into his dashboard, and he wants to be alerted by what's happening with Rachel, and Einstein's able to surface all of these alerts to Victor within his dashboard. So here he is, and at the top right-hand corner, we can see that there's been a large deposit placed into an account by Rachel. And when he double-clicks into that, he can see when that occurred, what amount was deposited, and why the alert happened. So it's not just the insight, it's the information behind why that insight is relevant. And as he looks across, he can see his dashboard that gives him all of his up-to-date information around where his leads are coming in from, around how he's converting his leads, and around how Einstein's predicting the lead score and allowing him to focus his energy on the leads that are most likely to convert. And what he's also able to do is take advantage of that referral engine that allows him to see where his referrals are coming from and allows AI to take advantage of that. So he understands who's giving him the most business, and he's able, or the algorithms are able to take advantage of that information and use it as part of predicting the lead score and who to focus his energy on next. So why don't we take a look at Rachel and look at her in the context of all the accounts she has and all the relationships she has, and as that has been built up within the FSC data model. So we can see all of the savings and checkings accounts, the cards that she's been able to sign up to, all of her investments and her loans, and all of the other products she has within the bank. What we can also do is understand Rachel within the broader context of her household, of how her household relates to other households, and how there are different types of legal frameworks between partnerships or trusts or power of attorney that matter within the broader context of who Rachel is within her social network. And along those lines, what we can also do is take a look at the activities across the lines of business. And this is exactly what Anthony was talking about, reducing all of the verticals and looking horizontally around our organization. We can see how an advisor has reached out, how administrators have set up events with Rachel and that household, and how we've interacted and aligned as one to help Rachel meet her needs and goals. So why don't we take a look at what Einstein's able to do with this information? So now that we have all of this information within one data model, what we're able to do is have Einstein look through it and provide insights and alerts. So in this case, we have no goals defined for Rachel. And it's focusing our attention not just on what product we should be positioning or where we should go next from a sales perspective, but also understanding why Rachel has deposited that large sum of money. So when Victor picks up the phone and he calls Rachel, he's able to start discussing what her goals for that are. He's able to enter that information and realizes that she's looking to purchase a home, not right away, roughly a year from now, and would like a safe place to invest that money over the next year and have it available for a mortgage a year from now. So what Einstein is able to do with that is create an opportunity for a safe vehicle of investment, in this case a CD, and start recommending additional actions that should be taken. So in this case, it's create a referral for a mortgage specialist. In this case, it's also place Rachel on a nurture journey so that she can be educated about the mortgage products at Cumulus Bank, and to open up that CD within the context of working with Rachel on the phone or in person. So by opening that bank account, we're now going to our partner network and we're leveraging the power of nCino. You saw it on the FSC stage when we were looking at credit checks for a loan product. Here it is for a short-term savings product, where we're able to take all of the information we have within the profile, we're able to quickly enter that into the application process that has been streamlined for a cloud-first customer-centric experience, generate all of the documents that are needed in order to sign electronically, and have all of that at the fingertips of the banker that's working with Rachel. What we can also do is look at the application process in the context of a much wider business process. As opposed to just being the account opening stage, we can now look at the action plans in order to determine what we need to do to be compliant within this highly regulated set of activities in order to open the account and make sure that we're compliant with all the regulations that hit our geographies. So from this perspective, what we've done is we've looked at this from the retail banking perspective. Now let's fast forward and take a look at what the mortgage specialist would see. So similar to the retail banker, we now have access to Maxine's desktop. And what we're able to do is see how she's using the same framework. However, for her, it's important to understand the pipeline. So you can see that one of the quadrants is how her pipeline is performing and what she should be focusing on from that perspective. It's all dynamic too. She can drill into where her leads are coming from the perspective of a mortgage. And Einstein is again alerting her that Rachel Adams has a new mortgage opportunity and that Maxine should be focusing on Rachel at this point in time. So by taking a look at that opportunity, what Maxine's able to do is quickly see how Rachel stacks up against the ideal and the average candidate. We're taking all of this data and providing insights and value to Maxine. We're also able to see where the referral came from, what the predictive lead score for that referral is, how satisfied Rachel is. We're able to see what other banks are offering in terms of competitive rates, and through integrations with Yodlee and other partners, we're able to see where Rachel's money is in other accounts that we aren't managing. And this gives us a holistic view of who Rachel is, what she's looking for, how she compares to the ideal and to the ideal candidates, and provides the insights around how she's engaging with the content on that marketing journey that we have placed her on. We can see that she opened the email 2 days ago. We can see that she visited the website. And this makes it a perfect lens with which to take our decisions and make sure that we're acting in Rachel's best interest at each step of the journey. Now, we've been looking at this from the single contributor lens with both the retail banker and the mortgage banker. Why don't we take a look at how all of this same data through FSC can be surfaced in a national executive view of our business? We can take those same insights as to where the largest portions or stages of our mortgage process are being taken up. Where do we need to focus our attention to make sure that we can shorten the end-to-end mortgage application process? What does that look like nationally? As we scroll down, we can see how our sales teams are performing, the regional directors, the mortgage specialists. We can take that information and build out trend analysis to make sure that we're on track to hit our targets. And as always, we have access all the way down to the most granular data so that we can take all of these insights and action them to either create new processes or take our company in a different direction to make sure we maximize on the insights that AI and data is providing to us in an actionable framework. So with that, Matthew, I want to thank you for driving and turn it back over to Anthony.
Thank you very much, David. So the incredible thing about that demonstration is that that's powered by Financial Services Cloud. All of that vertical attributes around the product and the customer and the need and the account gets flowed into every single standard object that you're familiar with from Salesforce. So at this point, I would like to call up our two guest customers to come and join me. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Ryan Johnson, Head of Strategy from City National Bank, and Ken Meyer, who's the CTO at SunTrust, based in Atlanta. Gentlemen, thank you. So I'd like to start out with Ken. Let's start out with you. If you could introduce yourself, your role in the bank, your history there, things of that nature.
Sure. So Ken Meyer, actually, as of about a week ago, I have a new title. So I'm actually the CTO for our consumer bank, which covers mortgage, private wealth, and retail, and then also cover our marketing, as well as all of our digital assets. So I've been with the bank for about 4 years, spent 2 years actually in the business on the wholesale side, and then moved over into the IT space about a year ago in the enterprise role, working on enterprise architecture and all of our shared service delivery, including of Salesforce.
And you've had actually a very interesting experience with Salesforce on the commercial side. If you could just share that for a bit.
Yeah, we have, in the wholesale side, we were down a path for a long time. We had been an early adopter of Salesforce, had been a customer of Salesforce since 2003, and had an opportunity to consolidate a number of our orgs into a single org for wholesale, and then partnered as an early adopter of nCino on the loan origination side. And so we've been working with our partners from Accenture and nCino for a while now. We've been live on the nCino platform in wholesale for a year for a number of our lines of businesses within wholesale. And then we've got the rest of it coming on board and starting treasury onboarding here, hopefully in 2018.
So big drinker of the Kool-Aid.
We are.
Ryan, and yourself and City National?
Yeah, so I'm Ryan Johnson. I head up the corporate strategy for City National. Our journey is a little bit different than SunTrust. We're a relatively new CRM customer of Salesforce. We did our launch earlier this summer where we have an enterprise-wide deployment on Lightning, which has been phenomenal to watch. The significant upgrades we've had in our business just to improve the business attributes we've been going after around greater collaboration, visibility into our clients. And as a private and commercial bank, for us, the go-to-market is really dependent upon deep relationship knowledge of the people with whom we work, bringing forth the right team with the right resources, with the right insight, and we're happy that we're really moving well along that journey.
I'm lucky I've had the opportunity to work with both of your organizations over the last couple of years. I want to start off first by asking, and Ryan, I'll start with you, is what are you seeing specifically, if we talk about trends in your market and your customer base, the things that are affecting your strategy, and then directly, what are you hearing from your consumers?
Yeah, so our clients tend to be very asset-rich, time-poor, and for us to redefine how do we go to market to serve the needs of entrepreneurs, their businesses, their families, across banking and wealth management, there has to be a certain respect for the challenges that they run into. So there's a very strong drive to start to reimagine their needs as the starting point and rethink back how does the organization go to market to meet those needs in a more effective way. Generally, there's so many competitors out there. Banking to some degree is becoming a commodity. You have to find where do you define yourselves, how do you differentiate yourselves, and for us it's relationships and service. So for us it's that idea of if you build those deeper relationships, a greater level of trust, and you can move faster than the competition too, you're more likely to deliver upon our trust attributes behind it.
And it's part of your vision there about how you can respond quicker now that you've embraced the platform and get quicker releases out there and things of that nature.
Yeah, and part of it too is going back and thinking about how we do things internally as well. We have both our external customers, we also have our internal bankers who are our real clients as well. And to understand that need, one of our big approaches was to make sure we spend a lot of time with the lines of business themselves, asking them, what are your pain points? What are the challenges that you run into? And then use that as an opportunity to inform our strategy. In fact, we have a center of excellence set up. We have representation from all the lines of business across the enterprise who share their points of view, their challenges, their pain points. And that truly is the informing driver behind what we end up prioritizing in our own roadmap.
So Ken, from your perspective, you're a much larger bank, quite a diversified line of business. From the consumer side, clearly the most challenging and the most complex. What are the primary demands that you're seeing that actually you're now tasked with helping to address?
Well, I think you stole a bunch of it in your original discussion points. I mean, when you think about it, we're a purpose-driven company, and we talk about lighting the way to financial confidence and well-being. And to make our clients financially client, it's got to start with the clients, right? So you really have to start thinking differently about how you approach everything you do. And so, we're looking at it as, from a business standpoint, getting all of the alignment and making sure that our strategy is on point and that we're looking at clients and doing business with them, how they want to be doing business and where they want to be doing business. But then if I take more of the IT lens to it, when we look at our strategy and what we need to do, the API piece is huge, right? And cybersecurity is huge. And all of the cloud computing capabilities are going to be critically important because those big old mainframe systems aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So where are you going to spend your time, and how are you going to differentiate in the marketplace from an IT perspective in the channels that ultimately your clients want to operate in is difficult. And You've got traditional banks that have had those silos and those segmentation, and they've worked a certain way for a really long time, and change is really hard. So, we're attacking it head on.
So I put a slide up earlier that showed sort of the legacy vertical perspective and all the components and how we need to shift to horizontal. And I know that's your strategy in terms of being a relationship first bank. In your bank, where you've got sort of relatively large discrete lines of business, how at the street level you get people to collaborate over those thresholds? Rohit talked about putting windows up between the silos, that they're not going to go away, but at least people can collaborate.
Yeah, a big part of it, we've launched over the last year a business accelerator program where ultimately between our partners in IT and those folks that live in those the horizontal, right, and the folks that live in the vertical can actually collaborate and do things in a more agile way. That's one of the specific efforts. But I think at the end of the day, we've been real focused on the fact that we live in the matrix, and we've lived in the matrix for a really long time. And as we continue to evolve as a bank, we got to make sure that we're focused on the client, and the client is at the center of what we do. And we're going to ultimately try to deliver the entire bank to our clients and not just look at it as a product or a service.
So Ryan, you come at it from a different lens per se, slightly smaller organization, but relationship first, products and lines of business second. Do you see your strategy here to help accelerate that?
Not really. I say I got really lucky walking into a bank. I've been at City National for 3 years, and it's one of the most client-centric companies I've ever walked into. And so to some degree, my job was a lot easier because I didn't have those silos to work across. For us, it's really formalizing and acting at bigger scale. We were acquired by Royal Bank of Canada a few years ago, and in that time, we've gone from $32 billion in assets to $48 billion in a very short period of time, and we've grown, I think, our colleague base by about 25%. And so for us, it's this idea of you go through this incredibly fast growth, how do you maintain the cultural friendliness, the accessibility, the differentiators that are really that human touch that come along with it as well. And now we're running into the same challenges as some of the larger organizations do around heightened expectations, regulatory standards that we had in place today, but you just have a little bit different way to go back and prove the work that you're doing. So for us, it's this idea of how do you maintain who we are, what we represent, but do so at a far greater scale than we've been able to do in the past.
So I talked about earlier about unlocking the potential of the bank and digital sort of really becoming what we're seeing as sort of the panacea of what distribution could be. Ken, from your perspective, I mean, you guys are very large, multiple distribution points. How do you see the influence of digital technology blurring those lines? Right? I mean, do you see them coalescing, or?
I mean, I hope we stop talking about digital technology.
Yeah.
The reality is that a lot of organizations, and ourselves included, focused on, we have to have digital. The reality is whether you're being digital on the front end of your clients and customers, or you're digitizing your back end, everything we do has to become digital. So it's partly just changing the mindset, but I mean, the topics of AI, and I mean, if you're not investing time and trying to learn your way through this and be willing to fail, which is very different for banks, right? I mean, we like to have the answers to the test.
Failure is a 4-letter word in a bank.
Everybody's got to know all the answers before we do anything in a bank. But the reality is that we have to be courageous and try things and be willing to fall on our face and get back up and do it again.
Yeah. It's actually refreshing to hear a banker say that. And in your case, where high touch is sort of how do you see that morphing from where digital sort of provides that flavor of high touch and augments the human experience, and they don't feel disconnected?
I like what Ken just said. Just expand upon that too, is if you stop talking about we need to invest in technology, we need to start investing in needs, you change the conversation quite a bit. And it changes the idea of what are we trying to solve for, and how do you do it more simply. So in our case, where we're not necessarily going to make the massive investments in building top-notch, client-facing, bells and whistles-driven capabilities, it's all about empowering our advisors, our bankers, our relationship managers with the information that they need, that they can continue to deliver phenomenal client service. So in the case of AI and other capabilities, if we can suggest up to them, here's some things that you might want to think about, or here's warning signs, or you've got loans that are coming due, that empower them to be more thoughtful in their conversations with the people, we can still retain that human touch, but they're now interacting with them at a far higher level of insight and responsiveness than they could have done otherwise. And then on the inverse, of course, there's always hey, I heard your needs, I'm going to fulfill upon it as well. there's that added burden of how do you accelerate that cycle of delivery in a way that is defined around their expectations. Or we run into the challenges too, not just in banking, but everybody sees every other industry out there. It's simple, it's easy. You're my bank, you have my information. Why can't you do it more cleanly? That's the challenge we have to drive towards.
So if I pull up on that, and the underlying theme of all of Dreamforce has been around AI and the fourth industrial revolution. And I gave my thoughts on we're just a tip of the iceberg. From your perspective, I mean, is it the shiny buzzword of the year, or are we really entering a new era where AI could fundamentally be the new value proposition?
Well, I think it's just evolving, right? Because a year or 18 months ago, we didn't talk about AI, we talked about RPA, right? So now we've just changed acronyms and dropped the letter. But the reality is that we're going to continue to evolve, and technology is moving at a pace, especially in financial services, that's much faster, to your point, of other industries than we have been able to move. And some of it is because of technical debt, and some of it is because regulation, but we got to stop making excuses, right? So we should be thinking about, again, what are we trying to solve for? And for us, while a relatively large bank, we have the ability, because of our size, to be able to do things a little bit more agile, hopefully, than some of our competitors. And so being able to shift and change with that and do experiments and try things is great, but you got to make sure that you're doing it in areas in which you really want to differentiate. So understanding what you're trying to solve for when it comes to AI is, in my opinion, really, really critical, or you're just going to be spinning wheels and not really have anything to show for.
The next shiny toy that people don't know how to use. And Ryan, from your point of view?
Yeah, I think with all shiny new toys, there's opportunities to misuse it as well. I think there's phenomenal upside, particularly around simplicity of work, but you have to avoid the creep factor. So if my bank was following me on Twitter, I'd be nervous. And then secondarily, too.
Unless it was your wife.
Yes.
Then I would support it.
The secondary one that I think there's something to pay attention to is the data that we have has been structured based off of transactions and years of legacy. When you start to use suggestion engines to recommend stuff, there's always the risk of perceptions of implied bias, because that's what the data spells out as well. So there really has to be an emerging framework, which I haven't heard anybody talk about yet, of how do you use AI in the right way to drive the right decisions, but not in a way that creates some form of bias for the people that you're trying to serve. And there's that risk that in big data sets, you just don't know it until you spend more time looking at it.
So last question, I'm just cognizant of time. Top piece of advice, you've been using Salesforce and embracing this ecosystem for a long time. Piece of advice you can give everybody who's on various parts of their journeys, and Ryan as sort of somebody new to Ohana.
Hire really good people.
That's... I take it there was a bad experience there.
No, I mean, the reality is that you can't do this by yourself. You obviously need good partners. You have to make sure that you're connected and all of that. But I think at the end of the day, before we were really serious about leveraging Salesforce as a strategic partnership, right? In the past, it was everybody ran out and got their own cloud, right? And everybody was able to do whatever they wanted to do. And the reality is as those silos start to break down and you look across the matrix, it makes it harder, right, to move forward. And so if you have really strong folks that know what they're doing and you trust them and you think that that they can do this, they usually can, and they do. So I mean, we've invested in our teammates. And it's exciting to see the progress that we've been able to make in the last 3 to 5 years on the platform, because we've had great partners and we've had great teammates.
Excellent. Ryan?
Exact same thing. It's really all about the people. We spent longer times than we expected to hire, which is largely a brand new team, which is sitting out in the crowd at City National. But what we really wanted to do is build this culture of people who understand the business needs and the technology needs, and more importantly, they're working really well together to solve for those jointly. And for us, that was a different way of working, where in the past we would assign things off and hope somebody would get the work done. But this idea for you to truly be successful, it has to be collaborative, has to be done in partnership, and has to be done with people who care and have the passion for it as well. So for us, it's a lot of that interest of you got to get the right mindset, you got to get the right culture in place, and then surprisingly, the technology is a lot easier to do than it's ever been. Just get the people done right.
Words of wisdom. Gentlemen, thank you very much, as always. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. I'd like to wrap this up with a couple of call to actions, just shout out. In the industry theater, we're going to have Bank Lumi now spend about 20 minutes sharing the incredible digital transformation they've done over the last 4 to 5 years. There's another session this afternoon run by a colleague of mine, Greg Blousy. We're calling it the Digital Branch. And please visit the industry campground. Thank you, everybody. Have an incredible Dreamforce. Thank you for being here.